exclusively by Harper Auto Square. You are watching WBIR TV, Channel 10, Knoxville. The news starts now.
Fires continue to burn in East Tennessee's mountain towns.
He has suffered through significant storm damage over the years, but nothing like this.
The people impacted by the devastating fire that officials are calling one for the history books.
The way to describe it was walking into the gates of Hades.
We're surrounded by flames and we have no escape and we're suffocating.
What's left behind and how firefighters continue to fight the flames in our region today. Plus, more rain moving in, how it could help, and what you can do. 10 News at 6 starts now.
Our wildfire coverage continues from Sevier County. Good evening. Along with Robin Wilhoit, I'm John Becker, and it was about this time last night that things got intense. Within the hour, we saw fire running the lines and spot fires across the mountains behind us, and the city of Gatlinburg was in a serious crisis. Fortunately, we're not seeing that tonight. The wind's down, but we did get some grim news, Robin, at a press conference this afternoon.
We certainly did. The mayor of Gatlinburg saying this is a fire for the record books, and it has proven to be a deadly fire. 3 people killed as a result of this firestorm that swept through last evening. 14 others injured. We've been told 3 of those injured have been taken to Vanderbilt Burn Center, so you know they are significant injuries, but they do range from critical on down. Identities have not been given to us at this point. They are still working desperately to gather more information, as you can well imagine. As far as number of structure fires, what we heard from Sevier County authorities, about 150 structure fires in the Cobley Knob area, in the Wares Valley area, about 70 apiece in those areas. As far as Gatlinburg, an interesting scenario there. Gatlinburg centric was untouched, that main parkway area, but it was the surrounding area of Gatlinburg that we see the devastation. Homes gone, buildings gone, and it was very, as you said, sporadic in which how this happened and where the fire hit.
The governor described this as a fire we haven't seen in 100 years, on a fire season that we haven't seen in decades, on top of a drought where the last significant rainfall we've seen was 5 months ago after last night. So that gives you a sense of where we sit right now. The city of Gatlinburg, as Robin mentioned, okay, but getting down to the city center was a harrowing experience. We turn first to WBIR 10 News reporter Jim Matheny, who has more on the evacuees.
These are the smoke masks that we were wearing. You can see how black and charred they are.
Staring straight into a ring of fire and the eyes of death. With your final breath, what would your final words be? Krista Forden knows.
We're surrounded by flames and we have no escape and we're suffocating.
Trapped in a smoke-filled Park Vista hotel with her son and nephew, Forden secretly pressed pen to paper and prepared for the final punctuation of her life.
The kids don't know I did this, but I wrote down my son's name, his age, and the state he's from, my nephew, my name, and that I was the mother.
Identity, age, location. Forden then prepared for her last conscious breath as smoke overwhelmed the hotel.
I knew we only had minutes and that we would eventually pass out, and I was thinking, I was so thankful that we would pass out so that they didn't have to, experience anything more devastating than what they had already experienced.
While she prepared for the worst, Forden never gave up, and smoke cleared enough inside the hotel to give local rescue crews time to cut through the burning roadblocks and help Forden's family make their escape.
So thankful for what they did for us. They stayed with us even though their families were going through tragedy and they didn't know where their families were.
It's all gone.
Through the flame and eventually found refuge at the wilderness at the Smokies. Her family's inhaled a lot of smoke, but they are still breathing. And although this was not their last gasp, if it had been, Forden knows what she would say. And the final sentence of her note, prepared to part ways in peace.
And then I wrote that say we love you and We are cuddling, calm, and at peace. I can't believe we lived through it.
In Sevier County, Jim Matheny, WBIR 10 News.
With the firestorm, for the most part, over from last night, the job at hand today was assessing. And just minutes ago, Governor Bill Haslam left from a helicopter. He had been here on the ground a couple of hours talking to the emergency management officials, firefighters, getting the latest on what was happening on the ground. He saw it for himself on the ground, but he also saw it from the air, the destruction from the air. He said it's been a really tough couple of weeks. I had the opportunity to talk to him just very briefly on the heels of what happened in Chattanooga to what is happening here in Sevier County, what has proven to be a deadly wildfire. Take a listen to what he had to say.
When you see that number of houses that are burned out, and you can tell how fast the fire went because they're burned to a lot of them are burned to the ground. It's a little numbing, to be honest with you, to see the extent of the damage. So, again, the other thing that you see when you're up there is, I guess because I know because of the wind, the fire happened in so many different places.
As you heard the governor say, yes, that fire happened in so many different places, and the governor's hearing from so many different people throughout the day from around the country, people offering their condolences, expressing their sorrow, among them President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Pence expressing their sorrow and saying once they're in office, if there are things that the state, if this area in particular needs, they are there to answer that call.
And the current situation is still one of nervousness and uncertainty because we know the winds are going to pick up and we know that there are some spot fires certainly around the area. Talking to fire bosses with the Department of Forestry tonight, they are seeing fire as we speak. Fortunately, it's contained in spots and not seeing those plumes that we saw in many cases over the last couple of weeks. We are seeing some of the damage that our cameras were able to zero in on today, rolling through parts of Gatlinburg, Ski Mountain Road. If it's a bit hard to hear me, that's because a Black Hawk helicopter is taking off behind us. But we want to turn to Michael Crow, who has one of the neighborhoods and been there really throughout the afternoon reporting for us, one of the neighborhoods that has been hardest hit around the Gatlinburg community. Michael, what can you tell us tonight?
Well, John, we can tell you out here at the resort off the Parkway, there is still a very active scene. A lot of cabins lost here today from those fires overnight. And right now, crews are working to get the power back on. I'll step out of the way. You can see them working here behind me. And I want to tell you, we had a really scary moment here just a few minutes ago. There have been propane tanks on this hillside that burned last night that had been venting through the day. We were watching these guys work. All of a sudden, we hear this loud psh from that propane tank up on the hillside venting. All these guys sprint away full tilt. My photographer Patrick and I here followed them. It's about the fastest we've run in a long time. But so it really speaks to the perils that they're still facing, even with most of these fires, at least in this area, out. We'll come around here and take a look at just some of the damage. This was a coffee shop here that has just been wiped away. You can see, again, it's very dark out here. We have to put a lot of lights on this because there is no power right now. You can see the coffee shop that was right here at the entrance to the resort is just completely gone. Again, we are at the Westgate Smoky Mountain Resort and Spa, but damage like this is really what we saw all over Gatlinburg and Sevier County today. Across Sevier County today, there were more questions than answers. This neighborhood along Beanstalk Road in Gatlinburg was one of the many evacuated. For good reason. The fire tore through, wiping out home after home, leaving only smoldering foundations and scorched hillsides. And through the day, many that left returned, picking their way through the rubble.
We didn't really think we was going to get out, but we ended up getting out and getting into Pigeon Forge. But now we're just trying to get back and see if everything's still there.
But the damage was so severe, some left still wondering if they had a home to come back to.
We were just trying to see if our house was still intact, but obviously the roads are not drivable at this moment, so we're going to head back to Pigeon Forge and wait till the roads get clear.
Besides the homes destroyed, many staying in rental cabins were also forced to flee in advance of the fire. Westgate Smoky Mountain Resort off the Parkway was also hit hard. dozens of buildings burned to the ground, and the main check-in building is now just a shell.
Well, everybody lost quite a bit around here, so.
Robert Arp and his family were vacationing here from Iowa. Their timeshare is now just a foundation. They lost everything inside. But they came back to see if anything was left, finding only burned cars and embers.
So it's like a war zone. I mean...
They're still not sure if their belongings will be replaced, but for now, they plan to return to Iowa, still counting themselves lucky.
But just to be able to go back home with everyone that we came with and everyone's safe, that's the main thing.
And it's difficult to see right now just because it's so dark and smoky out here, but if you're looking up above the hill here, you can actually see there is something still burning. We're looking at the glow of a fire right now, that just less than 100 feet from where these crews are working to get the power back on. We're seeing a lot of people heading down the parkway right now, emergency vehicles leaving Gatlinburg now that night has fallen. So there is a lot of work still to be done here, guys. We'll keep you updated. For now, back to you.
All right, Michael Crow, just one of our many reporters on the front lines of the firefight and the recovery effort. And it's worth noting, Robin, this is a small, tight-knit community. We've been saying it throughout our coverage throughout the day, but this is a place that's home to people 4,000 to 6,000 full-time, but sees tens of thousands, millions of people coming to see the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It's the gateway to our most visited national park.
It is a community. It is a community of people who know each other, who are feeling the impact, but in the midst of representing, I have to share this story, the mayor of Gatlinburg, trying to do his job in the midst of this tragedy, but losing his own home, his own business of 31 years. So this is personal. This is very personal. Speaking of Gatlinburg, we want to bring in Mary Scott. Mary, you had the opportunity to see with your own eyes the devastation that is in Gatlinburg, and it's very sporadic where that devastation is.
Yeah, that's right, Robin. I went up to Ski Mountain with the firefighters here. I rode up there with them behind the police barriers, and I can tell you there were dozens of homes that were burned to their foundations. And we also were witness to a pretty devastating scene when they were discovering the deceased, 2 deceased people on Ski Mountain. So it was difficult for them. That's what they've been working so hard to prevent. And when we were up there, they said they're going to keep trying that. So take a look at how they're doing it. On a mission to find new flames, this fire chief experienced the destruction on Gatlinburg Ski Mountain for the first time.
And of course 70 to 80 mile-an-hour winds.
Athens Fire Chief Jim Dyer took us along on his assignment to scope out the roads where ladder trucks can't go.
This is Chief Warren from Athens.
It doesn't take long to find new hot spots.
A couple of little open fires that are starting to get picked up from the wind, and we've got 2 structures within about 100 feet of them.
He's been working for about 30 hours with little sleep. He brought a ladder truck and crew to battle the wildfire that burned these homes to their foundation.
We were all very stunned when we got here last night. We've fought fires and open fires before, but never of this magnitude. When we left Athens, we were told there was 15 structures on fire. When we got here, there was probably 100 on fire. We passed 50 on our way up here to come into Gatlinburg.
His company helped to save a condo downtown, but there were so many different fires burning at once, they just couldn't make it to them all.
Well, the wind was blowing so hard, and then when the wind would catch and knock the power lines down, they would arc and spark, and they'd start more fires.
The way this fire took so many homes and left others untouched surprises even this 40-year veteran.
Boy, I can't believe these are standing.
That's why his search continues through the exhaustion.
This is a lot of people's homes, and that's why we all try as hard as we do.
And Robin and John, we saw the image there of the lone swing set sitting in a pile of burned rubble. It was amazing. As we were driving by, we would see one home untouched, and then the next 3, nothing left. It was an incredible sight there on Ski Mountain.
Mary Scott, we appreciate your reporting tonight. An emotional scene for so many folks who were involved in that search and rescue effort and also assessing the damage. We just learned from the National Park Service that that chimney tops fire that was just a couple of acres over the weekend ballooned to 15,000 acres. That's what they're putting that fire at the moment. And again, as Robin mentioned, the winds from last night were sparking fires from that very fire all across the mountains behind us.
This tragedy, if you will, is going to have a lasting impact, certainly for many people, including school children. Sevier County schools are closed tomorrow. We want to make you aware of that. And a couple of schools did sustain some damage. None destroyed, thankfully, but Warewood Elementary did experience wind damage. Pi Beta Phi does have smoke and wind damage as well. Both of those schools in the Gatlinburg area in the line of fire, needless to say, and feeling the impact of it.
And you mentioned wind damage to them. That's the key concern tonight. There is an ominous forecast, as the fire chief mentioned here in Gatlinburg, for tonight as well. And we want to turn to Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell, who is here with us on the scene, about those winds and the much needed rain that is forecast for the region, although, Todd, that is hours away now.
Certainly, we need the lack of wind and we need the rainfall. John and Robin, you're exactly right. You were talking about the high winds and wind damage from yesterday and last night. Those were strong southerly winds coming right over the top of the mountains, the Appalachian chain, and then back down into Gatlinburg. Now, the wind directions have changed today out of the southwest. However, while we're seeing not much of a breeze right now, winds are expected to pick up overnight tonight, unfortunately. And unfortunately as well, the heavier rains are not going to arrive here in Gatlinburg until tomorrow morning. Not really expecting much rain tonight. Heavy rainfall on the plateau moving into parts of the valley late tonight, but that heavy rain band's going to take a while to move into Gatlinburg. And the winds will start to increase again overnight with some advisories and warnings in place. That's the setup, the wind, then the rain. Let's talk about current conditions in Knoxville right now. Hope you're having a good, safe Tuesday as we are looking at a little bit of that southwesterly breeze. Again, here in Gatlinburg, technically we're near GP, Gatlinburg Pittman High School, and just a little bit of a light breeze right now. That's the current conditions. We had temperatures today in the mid-70s as we're looking at, again, the winds right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the current wind field because this really tells the story. Again, light winds, generally speaking, although a little bit of a southwest breeze. Let's go ahead and take a look at our futurecast winds because here's the issue. We're going to have a window or a period of time where the winds are increasing here in the mountains, specifically around the Gatlinburg area overnight before the rain arrives. And so the winds are expected to increase generally after midnight and into the early morning hours on Wednesday. And meanwhile, the heavier rains aren't expected to get here until after that time. So that's a look at the futurecast winds. Now, let's talk about our futurecast with our high-res model. Heavier rains are going to move out of Middle Tennessee onto the plateau into the Western Valley late tonight. So let's walk through. We're going to stop it at about 11:30. Heavier rain showers expected to move in off the plateau, approaching the Western and Central Valley, especially closer to midnight and thereafter. Then let's move forward as we go towards 6 a.m. early in the morning. That's when we're going to talk about the heavier rain showers starting to slide into the valley, but still generally west of Gatlinburg. And as we move forward with our futurecast model, again, not expecting the moderate to heavier showers here in the mountains until closer to mid-morning. Now, hopefully that modeling will speed up the rainfall as, meanwhile, the higher wind speeds are going to be early in the morning before the rains arrive, and that could certainly fan the flames and create some of these hot spots to flare back up overnight. So that's a look at the winds and our expected rainfall and the timing. Now, we do have a wind advisory for the foothills, including Gatlinburg overnight, and a high wind warning for the higher elevations. So let's talk about how much precipitation we could see. Look at the plateau. Heavy amounts of rain, anywhere from 2, 3, maybe 4 inches of rain possible overnight into Wednesday morning on the plateau. Not as much rain in the mountains until later tomorrow morning and during the day Wednesday. And again, generally speaking, 1 to 2 inches of rain are possible, but highest amounts could be focused along the plateau. Now, here's a look at Skywatch 10 radar. We had a little bit of evidence of smoke plume earlier. Not seeing that now. Of course, that is good news. And the rainfall from last night was focused right around a ½ inch for the Gatlinburg area and also into the Knoxville area, just over 0.6 at the airport. So here's a look at our convective outlook. Now, there is the possibility of some severe weather across parts of the Tennessee Valley to our west. And here's why. The temperatures have been warm. And let's go ahead and show you that regional satellite and radar composite. Tornado watch boxes in parts of Mississippi, Alabama, West and Middle Tennessee. The greatest threat for severe weather is to our west tonight, but we do have a slight risk for severe thunderstorm winds along the plateau, marginal risk for the valley. So tonight we're looking at a mild night. Winds will increase, especially in the mountains and foothills, 59 tonight. Tomorrow, 65. Showers are likely. A few stronger thunderstorms possible in the morning, and your 7-day planner shows cool and dry weather returning for Thursday, Friday, into part of Saturday in the 50s. More rain chances, I think, increase early next week. We're live in Gatlinburg, Pittman. Let's send it back over to you, John and Rob.
Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell setting the scene for us at the command center here. Todd, we appreciate that. And boy, that rain, as we mentioned last night, can't get here soon enough. They have been
As you can imagine, with a live signal in a situation like this, it's bound to cut out. We do apologize for the technical difficulties, but we will continue to cover this live from our Channel 10 studios. A couple of hours ago, we heard from the county and state leaders about the wildfires burning in Sevier County. I continue this coverage along with Moira Kay, who is in studio with me as well.
City, county, and state and federal agencies have responded to those wildfires, including TEMA, the National Park Service, and FEMA, and more than 100 different fire apparatuses from around the region.
More than 400 personnel responding from all different departments. Search and rescue efforts are underway now, and multiple structures are still on fire in Gatlinburg. We've seen incredible footage from an aerial view of these fires and the smoke resting over the hilltops. Crews are also working some hot spots in the county. Gatlinburg city leaders pointed out the Parkway area remains intact, and the Glades Buckhorn area also remains intact.
Emily Stroud is in Pigeon Forge for us today and has a report on what's been going on there. Emily?
Sign that says road closed. What has changed is the cars coming in and out. Now I'm on the Parkway at the very end of Pigeon Forge, right before you get to the park. You probably know it as traffic light 10. The road is closed, and so officials have been turning around cars all day long. The amount of cars trying to get through has slowed to a trickle as people learn that the road is closed. What has really changed is the amount of traffic coming out of the park. Not only cars, but also fire trucks and emergency vehicles and police officers' cars coming out that way. Well, as we've been stationed here all day, what we've noticed is people coming up who just want to ask us questions about a specific area that's been damaged, but more often just saying, how can I help? How can I help? People who live around here, visitors, tourists who are in the area. So there really is an outpouring of love and support here in Pigeon Forge. For those of you who shop or come to Winterfest or do anything like that in the city, the Parkway is open, the businesses are open. It's just when you get to the end of the Parkway here, there is a barrier and you cannot go through it. That's the latest from here in Pigeon Forge at Traffic Light 10.
And we are back here live in Gatlinburg, of course, the scene of that tragic firestorm that happened about this time last night, and we are 24 hours in. The governor was here for a couple of hours assessing the situation. He called this the largest fire in the last 100 years in Tennessee, and it has proven to be a deadly fire. 3 people perished in these many fires that sparked overnight. 14 other people were injured, 3 of those taken to Vanderbilt Burn Center. The injuries ranging from critical on down to stable. So the task at hand now is to get to areas that they have not been able to get to. And that process has been well underway throughout the day, but it's going to take a while to get into areas that they know have burned, but because of downed trees, because of downed power lines, they have not been able to reach them yet.
Fire crews have wanted to assure you, our viewers, and all the journalists here as well that Gatlinburg was saved. In fact, many of the iconic structures were saved. And we want to bring in one of our reporters, Madison Wade, joining us now for more on a tour that shows us a good sense of downtown Gatlinburg and just how close the flames did come to places like Ripley's Aquarium. Madison?
Absolutely, yeah. We took a tour near downtown Gatlinburg, just a few blocks off of that main road, and many homes, businesses were just flattened to the foundation, really. It was such a devastating sight to see all of this destruction. Well, as state and local leaders say, this fire was absolutely unexpected, so it really is so early to know how much this fire has destroyed in its path.
That my house was gone, and my business of 31 years is gone.
Multiple neighborhoods, resorts, hotels, and churches scorched, a sight that no one saw coming.
And when you see that number of houses that are burned out, and you can tell how fast the fire went because they're burned to a lot of them are burned to the ground. It's a little numbing, to be honest with you, to see the extent of the damage.
Governor Bill Haslam says as he flew into Sevier County, what he saw from above will be hard to forget.
A lot of us have heavy hearts at what's happened here. This is the largest fire in the last 100 years of the state of Tennessee.
A fire that is still burning with the potential to threaten more in its already destructive path. Those two people you just saw hugging each other were embracing each other because the First Baptist Church in Gatlinburg did not burn down to the ground, just a part of it did. So of course they were very thankful to see that that is still standing, just an iconic, another part of downtown Gatlinburg that many people are familiar with as well.
Madison Wade reporting, thank you. It's such an emotional scene for so many folks because, Robin, as you mentioned, this is a tight-knit community, and we talked to the folks who own Buckberry Lodge, and you're seeing this aerial video now. They have been in this community for a dozen years.
That you hear story after story of personal connections to this community, whether it be they came here on vacation or they honeymooned here or they have a cabin here. Those stories are constant, and that's why I keep going back to this is very personal to so many. But the one thing you continue to hear from everyone too is that this is a resilient community. The people here will bounce back. Gatlinburg will be better than it ever was. Once again, the heart of it saved by the fire, but certainly the outskirts devastated. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of support, and that is where our viewers come into play.
And we have a lot of ways for you to give. You can find that information on our website as well. Robin, you made the point earlier covering the press conferences throughout the day. This is about a 10 square mile radius, and half of it, according to the mayor, suffered some type of fire destruction in the blaze that rolled through here about this time last night. Things really kicking up. This is about the time evacuees were seeing flames licking at the sides of their hotel and making the decision to grab everything and go.
We are going to be waiting to see how it plays out this evening. They are expecting the winds to pick up some, the rain not expected until tomorrow. But we want to leave you now with aerial video, this of an area devastated by fire. Please continue to follow our coverage online, on social media, and we will be back later this evening with more details on this tragedy that has struck Sevier County.
Thank you for watching WBIR.
Tonight, raging inferno. A massive wildfire exploding through the Great Smoky Mountains turns deadly. Walls of flames fueled by hurricane-force wind gusts surrounding resorts. People running for their lives. Fire dangerously close to Dollywood. Miracle survivors found in the wreckage of a tragic air disaster. 71 dead as a plane carrying an underdog dream team goes down. Tonight, what may have caused the crash? Revoking citizenship? President-elect Trump's new threat over flag burning that experts say is unconstitutional. Detecting breast cancer. 1 in 6 women stricken won't even develop the most well-known symptom. Tonight, the subtle signs that could save your life. And best friends, a boy and his dog and an unbreakable bond, inspiring America. Nightly News begins right now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. There was so little time to flee as near 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts and plunging humidity sent a wildfire exploding overnight into a deadly and destructive rampage outside Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Thousands were driven from their homes, some fleeing with little more than the clothes on their back. This evening, scores of homes and businesses are left in smoldering ruins. And we learned late today that at least 3 people have been killed. It's happening southeast of Knoxville, around the popular resort areas of Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains. That's where Kerry Sanders has the latest.
Wow. The firestorm exploded in seconds.
Hit the gas! Hit the gas!
Residents and vacationers thought they were safe until they looked out their windows.
Panic. That's all we had was panic. We could feel the heat coming off. It was nothing but red.
Oh my God, it's so hot.
The escape was complicated by narrow mountain roads clogged with traffic, flames everywhere.
Worst day of my life.
Michael Reed separated from his wife and 2 children in the chaos. Tonight, unsure if Constance, 12-year-old Chloe, and 9-year-old Lily are alive.
She called from the house phone and said that there were flames across the street from our house and she didn't know what to do. I told her to call 911 and get out. That was the last time I heard from her.
Tonight, with the fire still burning, authorities are beginning to assess the damage. Entire neighborhoods destroyed. 14,000 ordered to evacuate. 2,000 fled to shelters. At least 150 structures damaged or destroyed. Gatlinburg is a resort town about an hour from Knoxville. The flames threaten several popular tourist destinations. The Great Smoky Mountains, the most visited park in the country, an aquarium with 10,000 animals, and Dolly Parton's Dollywood theme park. Dollywood was spared, but Parton, who this week released a public service announcement about wildfires, said she's heartbroken and praying for all the families. At the Park Vista Hotel, the fire trapped dozens of guests. Mike and Julie Sanders got married yesterday here at Westgate. A few hours later, the unimaginable.
This whole place is on fire.
How would you describe this?
The gates of hell.
The gates of hell.
Driving the fire, a record drought and wind gusts nearly 90 miles an hour. Tonight, officials are investigating the cause of the fire and have not ruled out arson.
There are hot embers in the devastation here, and that is a concern tonight because while the air is calm right now, it's predicted that the winds will pick up maybe to 60 miles per hour, can carry a hot ember miles from here, igniting another part of the Smoky Mountains. Lester?
All right, Kerry Sanders tonight, thank you. Tonight, crash investigators in Colombia have released a photograph of the black boxes from the plane that was carrying a Brazilian soccer team to a South American championship playoff in Medellin. Of the 77 people on board, 6 survived the crash, including just 3 team members. NBC's Tom Costello reports on the tragedy and what may have caused the crash.
The video and photos from the airport and then the plane are haunting. The young faces of Brazil's Chapecoense soccer club, an underdog dream team headed to the championship matches. But only hours later, tragedy. Daylight revealed the broken remains of the chartered plane scattered across the hillside outside of Medellin. Slowly, helicopters approached the site to remove the dead. Of the 77 people on board, only 7 were found alive. One of them, 31-year-old goalie Marcos Danilo, died at the hospital, but reportedly called his wife before passing away. Another player had just learned he was going to be a father. In the team's locker room today, 3 teammates who didn't make the trip were in disbelief. Amid vigils and moments of silence worldwide, soccer great Pelé said simply, Brazilian football is in mourning.
Everybody has placed their confidence in God that things will go well for us. Our Chapecoense team will have to go on. It is difficult. It is so difficult to speak.
The plane was a British Aerospace 146, a regional jet with 4 engines used mostly for short-distance flights. But flying from Bolivia into Medellin, the pilot reported an electrical problem and circled before crashing just miles from the airport.
One of the considerations the investigators are going to look at is if the airplane was too low on fuel, and because it was right at its maximum range.
A surviving flight attendant told rescuers the plane had run out of fuel. Accompanying the team on the plane, 21 journalists hoping to cover a fairy tale ending for a team that had surpassed all expectations, only to end in tragedy. Late word that surgeons had to amputate the right leg of surviving goalkeeper Jackson Follman. Meanwhile, the Colombian team that was scheduled to play against the Brazilians today asked the South American Soccer Confederation to award the championship title to their Brazilian competitors. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello tonight. Thank you, Tom. Now to the investigation at Ohio State, where the FBI is trying to determine what set off a student to plow his cart into a crowd, then go on a horrific stabbing spree yesterday. Was there a connection to ISIS or any other terror group? NBC's Stephanie Gosk has more.
Tonight, the FBI is poring over Abdul Artan's laptop and other digital devices. Law enforcement officials tell NBC News there is no established contact with ISIS or other terror groups, disputing an unsubstantiated claim from the Islamic State media arm that he was working with them. Authorities say they also have no reason to think his family knew what he was planning. Artan smashed his car into an OSU sidewalk and stabbed people with a butcher knife that authorities say he bought that morning at a local Walmart. Law enforcement officials also say a post was left on his Facebook page expressing anger over attacks on Muslims worldwide.
It scares me. It scares me that I live right next door to that and didn't even know.
Neighbor Luann Carnahan today was in shock.
Very nice people. The boy was actually very pleasant.
Artan's family fled Somalia in 2007, lived in Pakistan until 2014 when they moved to the United States. This is Artan celebrating his graduation from community college just last spring. Neighbors and friends say he was a devout Muslim. Amir Kadar prayed with Artan and saw him just 2 weeks ago. Did he sound frustrated with the country?
No, at all. He actually loved America. He loved the fact of the opportunity that he had here to go to school.
But police say Artan attacked that school.
Flipped me up in the air.
Professor William Clark says he thought it was a traffic accident at first.
But then there were people started shouting immediately.
Tonight, only 3 of the 11 injured are still in the hospital. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Columbus, Ohio.
A late flurry this evening of cabinet picks from President-elect Donald Trump. NBC News has learned financier Steven Mnuchin is expected to be named Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary as soon as tomorrow. And investor Wilbur Ross is expected to be named Trump's pick to lead the Commerce Department. Elaine Chao, former Labor Secretary and wife of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, is Trump's pick for Transportation Secretary. Also, Georgia Congressman Tom Price, a major opponent of Obamacare, is Trump's pick for Secretary of Health and Human Services. We have a lot more on that in just a moment. But first, the president-elect is overshadowing his own cabinet picks with his threat today about jailing or perhaps revoking citizenship for people who burn American flags in protest. That, experts say, would be unconstitutional. We get details on this new firestorm from NBC's Hallie Jackson.
The president-elect today proposing punishment for a form of protest that's protected, though not popular.
One flag was set on fire, one was stolen.
Not long after this segment about a college protest in which an American flag was burned, a Trump tweet. Quote, "Nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or year in jail." But burning the flag is a form of free speech under the First Amendment, upheld twice by the Supreme Court.
In this country, we have a long tradition of respecting unpleasant speech. I happen to support the Supreme Court's decision on that matter.
It's not that Americans like flag burning. In fact, before those court rulings, 48 of 50 states had laws banning it. In 2005, Hillary Clinton backed a bill that would jail flag burners. Still, to some, more troubling than Trump's threat to imprison protesters who burn the flag is his suggestion of stripping citizenship. That would also be unconstitutional.
The Supreme Court has ruled that taking someone's citizenship away can't be used as a punishment, that citizenship isn't a license that expires when someone commits a crime.
Now, even Newt Gingrich, a high-profile Trump ally, says he's got his own concerns about certain Trump tweets, like a recent one on voter fraud, pointing to the different weight of a president's words versus a candidate's.
The presidents of the United States can't randomly tweet without having somebody check it out.
The president-elect also on Twitter to promote what he's calling his thank you tour, kicking off Thursday in Cincinnati. He seemed to enjoy the energy of those campaign rallies as candidate. Now, as president-elect, Lester packing his bags to get back on the road.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thank you. Let's turn back to the president-elect's pick for Health and Human Services. It's shining a spotlight tonight on the coming effort to repeal and replace Obamacare. And the question for millions who depend on it, what next? NBC's Kristen Welker has that story.
Since Obamacare's implementation 6 years ago, Georgia Congressman Tom Price has been proposing ways to dismantle it.
A mandate that the government tells you what kind of health care you've got to have. Is that what you want? No!
Now, as President-elect Trump's pick for Secretary of Health and Human Services, he has his chance. Mr. Trump's promise to eliminate Obamacare could leave the 20 million people currently enrolled in the health care plan in limbo, like Adam Kuntz. Kuntz says Obamacare has helped him manage his diabetes. And while Mr. Trump has said he's open to protecting those with pre-existing conditions, Kuntz isn't convinced.
It's about trying to stay alive. I can't live without insulin. It's not a choice that I have insulin. I either get it or I die.
Kate Gonzito is worried too. She's wondering if her birth control prescription plan will be scrapped if Obamacare is repealed. So Gonzito opted for a longer-lasting IUD.
I made the appointment right after the election just because of uncertainties about what sorts of resources were going to be provided to me in the next 4 years.
But Jim Harrell says his Virginia Beach community has been hit hard by the rising cost of premiums under Obamacare, an average of 10% in the state.
Anything would be better than Obamacare.
Anything would be better than
Anything.
Obamacare. But will Mr. Trump and Congressman Tom Price be able to turn their promises for better, more affordable health care into reality?
Talking about repealing the Affordable Care Act is the easy part. Figuring out what's going to replace it and how to deal with the 20 million people who have already been covered by the law is going to be really tough.
Adam Kuntz just hopes they keep people like him in mind while crafting an alternative. Kristen Welker, NBC News, Stone Ridge, Virginia.
There was emotional testimony today in the trial over a deadly police shooting caught on camera. A former South Carolina police officer taking the stand in his own defense, accused of gunning down an unarmed African-American man last year. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has more on the drama in the courtroom and the video that stunned the nation.
This bystander's dramatic cell phone video last year appeared to show Walter Scott being shot in the back multiple times.
I'm scared.
Today, in a Charleston, South Carolina courtroom, the former officer accused of Scott's murder gave his first detailed public account of what happened.
I fired until the threat was stopped, like I'm trying to do.
Michael Slager says he'd pulled Scott over for a broken taillight in April of 2015 and was preparing to write him a warning, but Scott bolted from his car.
In my mind at that time, people don't run from a broken taillight.
Prosecutors say Scott fled because he was behind on child support payments and feared being arrested. Slager told the jury he fired his taser 3 times, but that didn't stop Scott from grabbing the stun gun.
It was total fear that Mr. Scott didn't stop.
The cell phone video, he says, picks up the encounter seconds later as Scott breaks away from the struggle. The prosecutor pressed Slager on why he moved the taser closer to Scott's body.
You don't leave a weapon in the middle of the field like that.
Slager now says in hindsight he would not have chased Scott on foot in the first place and instead called for backup.
His entire testimony was what he would have done different and things he's remembering now that he didn't remember then, which was just shocking.
The jury, made up of 11 white people and 1 black man, is expected to begin deliberations later this week. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News.
Still ahead here tonight, detecting breast cancer, the alarming number of women being diagnosed without the most common symptom, and one survivor who says a second opinion saved her life. Back now with a warning about detecting breast cancer. The most common symptom women report are lumps in the breast, but a recent study found that 1 in 6 patients have symptoms other than lumps, which can be more difficult to identify. NBC's Kristen Dahlgren with more on the subtle signs you should be watching out for.
You want your reins tied?
In 2013, Beth LaFleur did something that may have saved her life.
Is it a miracle that you're here? Perhaps, pretty close.
She noticed a change in her breast, not a lump.
I would just describe it as a thickening, and that's what caught my attention initially.
So she had a routine screening mammogram.
It was negative.
Nothing.
Nothing. That allows you to go a little longer.
But the nurse who works as a lactation consultant couldn't ignore the changes to the shape of her breast. So she got another opinion from Dr. Deborah Rhodes at the Mayo Clinic.
There's a very bright area in the center of her left breast,
and this corresponds to the area of her tumor.
More imaging showed stage 3 breast cancer beneath dense breast tissue. A new study of more than 2,300 women in England showed 1 in 6 patients have symptoms other than a lump.
What this new study tells us is it's profoundly important to be aware of your breasts, to be familiar with your breasts, even outside of a ritual monthly self-breast exam.
In other words, know your own body. Dr. Rhodes says remember the word NAPS, which stands for changes to the nipple, armpit, any pain, and changes to the skin or shape.
If they're subtle to you, they're certainly going to be even more subtle to someone who doesn't know you as well as you know yourself.
Beth is now 2 years cancer-free, loving every second with her granddaughter and all those milestones she might have missed if she had missed those subtle signs of her cancer.
Good job.
Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Rochester, Minnesota.
Up next, the factor that could make you 8 times more likely to have a major heart attack.
Thank you for watching WBIR.
I have now been able to confirm the loss of 3 lives in Sevier County. We're deeply saddened by these losses, and we extend our prayers to the family.
Fires continue to burn in East Tennessee's mountains.
He has suffered through significant storm damage over the years, but nothing like this.
The people impacted by the devastating fires that officials are calling one for the history books.
The way to describe it was walking into the gates of Hades.
We're surrounded by flames and we have no escape and we're suffocating.
What's left behind and how firefighters continue to fight the flames. Plus, more rain moving in, how it could help, and what you can do for the victims of the fires.
Good evening once again from outside Gatlinburg. I'm John Becker along with 10 News anchor Robin Wilhoit. We continue our special coverage of the ongoing wildfire threat in this community that at this time 24 hours ago was in crisis. People were literally packing up anything they could grab and then running for their lives down the mountains behind us.
And that devastation, that deadly night, it really has resonated throughout the nation. We have heard from the governor. We have heard from representatives from this area. We've heard from the president-elect as to their thoughts, their sorrow that they are expressing given the tragedy that has played out here. We do want to bring you up to date on the latest playing out in the Gatlinburg area, Sevier County. We know 3 people were killed as a result of this firestorm. 12 plus others were injured. 3 of those people have been taken to the Vanderbilt Burn Center. Their conditions range everywhere from extreme critical to anywhere down to good. So this has proven to be devastating on so many different levels, John.
It has, and that's the latest on the lives. Those are the most important things, as folks who have briefed us for the last several hours have continued to reiterate. As we speak, they are doing house-to-house searches to ensure that they clear all of the buildings before allowing people back in to collect their belongings and really see what is left. But the structures at this point, Robin, are also a concern. We saw at least 150. We're going to say there are dozens of structures, homes, businesses that are lost. That includes the mayor himself of Gatlinburg, who lost both his home and business.
The priority now, the safety of the people here. As a result of that, a curfew has been put in place. It started at 6 o'clock this evening. It will be lifted tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Another way to protect people, they're recommending that people, if you're still in the area, to boil your water. That is the priority. They said paramount, the safety of the people here.
We've been bringing you those aerial pictures as well, seeing just the many spot fires that occurred from what was at one time a very small fire in the chimney tops in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Gatlinburg, of course, the gateway to the Smokies, and that fire was blown out of control by the winds here last night. We are expecting more winds in the area tonight. Fortunately, not seeing that right now. But we are going to get a briefing shortly from Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell and what he sees as far as the updated forecast for both wind and rain.
Well, speaking of briefing, the governor was here for a couple of hours, in fact. He came in on a Black Hawk helicopter. He had the opportunity to see with his own eyes the devastation from the air and also on the ground. We want to bring in now 10 News reporter Madison Wade. Madison, bring us up to date on the governor's visit to this area, the devastation he saw.
Absolutely. Well, he said this is the largest wildfire that in the state of Tennessee in the last 100 years. So it just goes to show just the devastation, how quickly this came about. And also we took a tour just around downtown Gatlinburg, just off the main road there, and just saw homes and businesses flattened to the foundation, really nothing much left. But then across the street, hotels and other resorts were still standing. So as local leaders and state leaders have said, that this fire is so unprecedented, it's really too early to tell how much devastation this fire has left.
That my house was gone, and my business of 31 years is gone.
Multiple neighborhoods, resorts, hotels, and churches scorched, a sight that no one saw coming.
And when you see that number of houses that are burned out, and you can tell how fast the fire went because they're burned to a lot of them are burned to the ground. It's a little numbing, to be honest with you, to see the extent of the damage.
Governor Bill Haslam says as he flew into Sevier County, what he saw from above will be hard to forget.
A lot of us have heavy hearts at what's happened here. This is the largest fire in the last 100 years of the state of Tennessee.
A fire that is still burning, with the potential to threaten more in its already destructive path. Those two people you saw who were embracing each other were fire officials, just thanking each other and thanking the community for saving their church, First Baptist. But part of it did burn. I mean, it's just a glimmer of hope and so much devastation here in Gatlinburg and Sevier County as well.
Madison Wade reporting tonight for us. Thanks very much, Madison. We appreciate it. Again, just to reiterate what the governor was saying in that press conference, Gatlinburg is such a gem, not just known in East Tennessee, but across the country. People come here in the wintertime. They come here to ski in the wintertime. They come to enjoy family time in the fall and spring. And, of course, it's bustling in the summer as well.
Absolutely. And, of course, they were many people enjoying it just this past weekend for Thanksgiving. The impact on Gatlinburg has been significant. It was described to us as, imagine Gatlinburg proper, about 10 miles. Half of that, the city center, came out unscathed, but it's that surrounding area of Gatlinburg that is feeling the true impact of this firestorm. With that, we want to bring in 10 News reporter Mary Scott. Mary, you saw the devastation. You went on a reconnaissance tour, if you will, with some officials, and what did you see?
Yes, Robin and John, I went with these firefighters that are staged out here. Basically what they do is they get a call, they're ready to go, and they go out on all these different types of missions anytime they have another flare-up. And so that's what I went on, was a recon mission with the Athens fire chief. Here's a little bit of our trip. On a mission to find new flames, this fire chief experienced the destruction on Gatlinburg Ski Mountain for the first time in the daylight.
Last night, with the winds as high as they were, trees were falling on us. We had water issues and, of course, 70 to 80 mile-an-hour winds.
Athens Fire Chief Jim Dyer took us along on his assignment to scope out the roads where ladder trucks can't go.
This is Chief Warren from Athens.
It doesn't take long to find new hot spots.
A couple of little open fires that are starting to get picked up from the wind, and we've got 2 structures within about 100 feet of them.
He's been working for about 30 hours with little sleep. He brought a ladder truck and crew to battle the wildfire that burned these homes to their foundation.
We were all very stunned when we got here last night. We've fought fires and open fires before, but never of this magnitude. When we left Athens, we were told there was 15 structures on fire. When we got here, there was probably 100 on fire. We passed 50 on our way up here to come into Gatlinburg.
His company helped to save a condo downtown, but there were so many different fires burning at once, they just couldn't make it to them all.
Well, the wind was blowing so hard, and then when the wind would catch and knock the power lines down, they would arc and spark, and they'd start more fires.
The way this fire took so many homes and left others untouched surprises even this 40-year veteran.
Boy, I can't believe these are standing.
That's why his search continues through the exhaustion.
This is a lot of people's homes, and that's why we all try as hard as we do.
Back live here with 10 News anchor Mary Scott, who spent a couple of hours on the fire lines tonight, or earlier today, Mary, with that tour. Describe some of the scenes you saw just that you couldn't fit in that story.
Oh, so many. But one of them was how many propane tanks there are on Ski Mountain. All of these homes have them, and that's a very big danger to firefighters if they weren't vented properly. And so the fire chief was saying that there had been a number of explosions last night, and he was concerned about that on our trip.
We heard that in some of our reporting from Michael Crow on his scene as well. Propane, a key source of fuel for folks across the mountains. Mary, also just the escape route that you saw. What's it like driving on Ski Mountain Road? We saw a sense of that in your story, but describe it further for us.
I was thinking about all of those people trying to get out last night. We heard about the traffic, and so being there today on those curvy roads, very steep at times, drop-offs, and even if you were having too many cars trying to pass, that would be so difficult. So I definitely was thinking about those folks today, and then trying to get fire trucks up there is impossible. So they use pumpers, smaller, types of engines to get up there, and that's what they've been doing to put out the hot spots.
And one last question on those hot spots, Mary. Describe how fire crews are treating them. They're seeing them and then calling in help.
Yes, and so that's what we saw in our story. We have so many crews out there that they're going into different parts of the mountain, and they'll radio in an address and they'll say, hey, we have a spot here. It's 100 feet from the home. Can you please come out when you can and put it out?
In another way, I know they've battled the flames today with Black Hawk helicopters. Actually, 2 of them at about 1:30 this afternoon were coming in, swooping down nearby ponds, grabbing up water and then pouring that on some burning structures. So they are definitely employing whatever means necessary to extinguish the flames.
We're glad the wind has finally died down a little bit for that as well.
And we hope it continues to stay this way. Of course, there were some reports in the briefing that we had that there is that possibility that the wind could kick up again tonight, not to the degree that we saw it last night, possibly though in the 50s, 60 mile per hour range. Time will tell, but as of right now, things are calm.
10 News anchor Mary Scott, we appreciate your time. Thank you for your reporting. Again, up on the fire lines today. Still a lot of uncertainty in this community as well tonight. And Robin, just to touch on those Black Hawk helicopters with the Tennessee Army National Guard, they have been working for weeks now, not just in East Tennessee, but really to our south and to our west. They have had a very busy fire season, and it's a fire season we haven't seen like this in decades. We talked about you mentioning and reporting the 30 bucket drops that they were able to do, probably even more than that this afternoon.
Absolutely. We talked to Colonel Wade with the National Guard, and he had said that, as you mentioned, the last couple of weeks had been harrowing when it comes to fighting the fires in the region. But this past weekend, they thought, you know what, I think we've got it control. And then, of course, last night happened. And we have seen the scenes play out over and over again of the exodus, if you will, off the mountain. Terrified people as they were leaving. Well, Jim Matheny met up with a woman who was at the Park Vista Hotel who thought she had uttered her final words.
These are the smoke masks that we were wearing. You can see how black and charred they are.
Staring straight into a ring of fire and the eyes of death. With your final breath, what would your final words be? Krista Forden knows.
We're surrounded by flames and we have no escape and we're suffocating.
Trapped in a smoke-filled Park Vista hotel with her son and nephew, Forden secretly pressed pen to paper and prepared for the final punctuation of her life.
The kids don't know I did this, but I wrote down my son's name, his age, and the state he's from, my nephew, my name, and that I was the mother.
Identity, age, location. Forden then prepared for her last conscious breath as smoke overwhelmed the hotel.
I knew we only had minutes and that we would eventually pass out, and I was thinking, I was so thankful that we would pass out so that they didn't have to, experience anything more devastating than what they had already experienced.
While she prepared for the worst, Forden never gave up, and smoke cleared enough inside the hotel to give local rescue crews time to cut through the burning roadblocks and help Forden's family make their escape.
So thankful for what they did for us. They stayed with us even though their families were going through tragedy and they didn't know where their families were.
It's all gone.
Forden fled through the flames and eventually found refuge at the wilderness at the Smokies. Her family's inhaled a lot of smoke, but they are still breathing. And although this was not their last gasp, if it had been, Forden knows what she would say. And the final sentence of her note, prepared to part ways in peace.
And then I wrote that say we love you and we are cuddling, calm, and at peace. I can't believe we lived through it.
In Sevier County, Jim Matheny, WBIR 10 News.
Back live here with our special coverage. That's just one example of the desperation here in this community about 24 hours ago. And you heard that fire victim talking about the fire crews risking their lives, cutting through downed trees, working their way through down power lines in order to get to people who were in desperate need of saving.
Absolutely. We are told upwards of 400 personnel on the ground here saving, rescuing, also assessing. It has been a long process. It will continue to be a long process. The one thing that we keep mentioning is that this was just not one big wildfire. This was many wildfires, if you will, just because the smoke, or the wind rather, pushed the flames from one fire on chimney tops and scattered it around the region. One area that was heavily damaged by the flames is Westgate Resort. 10 News reporter Michael Crow has been there throughout the day. And Michael, bring us up to date.
Right, well, you're right. Westgate was heavily damaged. Dozens of buildings burned to the ground overnight. The main check-in point is just a shell now. We are down actually near the entrance, away from some of the heavier damage. We've moved here through the afternoon. I want to give you an update since we last talked to you. There are still fires burning here. You can see up on the ridge right above us, it is a faint glow, but that is still embers. That is a fire that continues to burn at this hour. And that's just less than 100 feet, maybe a couple hundred feet from where crews are working to get the power on back here. It is dark right now. It has been pitch black since the sun went down. We'll give you a look here at what they're doing. These are power crews that are out here working to get lines back up. There were many trees that fell on power lines, knocked out the power in this area. These guys are working here, and let me tell you, it is a hazardous job. You heard from Mary Scott there about those propane tanks exploding and venting at least 3 times while I've been out here today. We have heard propane tanks on this hillside beside us, mostly when it was warmer out and the sun was up, vent with this loud psst noise. And the last one was about an hour ago. These linemen here were working. We were working on our story here in the car, and we hear that noise, and all of the guys here just take off at a dead sprint down the hill, and we ran too. So it really speaks to the hazards that are out here that these guys are facing as they try to get the lights turned back on, and Sevier County just tries to rebuild.
Across Sevier County today, there were more questions than answers. This neighborhood along Beanstalk Road in Gatlinburg was one of the many evacuated. For good reason. The fire tore through, wiping out home after home, leaving only smoldering foundations and scorched hillsides. And through the day, many that left returned, picking their way through the rubble.
We didn't really think we was going to get out, but we ended up getting out and getting into Pigeon Forge. But now we're just trying to get back and see if everything's still there.
But the damage was so severe, some left still wondering if they had a home to come back to.
We were just trying to see if our house was still intact, but obviously the roads are not drivable at this moment, so we're going to head back to Pigeon Forge and wait till the roads get cleared.
Besides the homes destroyed, many staying in rental cabins were also forced to flee in advance of the fire. Westgate Smoky Mountain Resort off the Parkway was also hit hard. Dozens of buildings burned to the ground, and the main check-in building is now just a shell.
Well, everybody lost quite a bit around here, so.
Robert Arp and his family were vacationing here from Iowa. Their timeshare is now just a foundation. They lost everything inside. But they came back to see if anything was left. finding only burned cars and embers.
So it's like a war zone. I mean.
They're still not sure if their belongings will be replaced, but for now, they plan to return to Iowa, still counting themselves lucky.
But just to be able to go back home with everyone that we came with and everyone's safe, that's the main thing.
So really the sad reality tonight is the damage here at the resort, the damage in those neighborhoods is not unique. There are people all over trying to figure out what to do next, but for now, what is direct here and what they do know they can work on is getting the lights back on here, restoring power. That's what these crews are working on. That's what all the first responders we're seeing driving by are heading out to do. They're checking hot spots like the one behind us. They're checking on places that they may have put out earlier that they want to make sure are completely extinguished. But there is a really unfathomable amount of work to be done here now as we head in tonight. Guys, back to you.
Michael Crow reporting from the scene of the fire lines there. Michael Crow, we appreciate your reporting throughout the day, giving us just a taste of what it's like in the communities surrounding Gatlinburg, the small neighborhoods that at one point last night were under voluntary evacuation and then all of a sudden moved to a forced evacuation. I want to update you as well on the school damage situation. Sevier County schools will not open tomorrow. School spokesperson is saying that some schools did experience some minor damage. Weirwood Elementary School did see some wind damage. Pi Beta Phi Elementary in Gatlinburg also saw some minor wind and smoke damage, Robin.
Let's go back 24 hours, essentially 24 hours from now. What we experienced was unprecedented, unpredicted. It just happened. And what happened was fires that were burning on the Chimney Top Mountain. The winds, tough, strong winds, 87-mile-per-hour winds, sent those flames and the debris flying. And the wind was the key here. And wind is an issue tonight. Right now, it is calm, but they are expecting the winds to pick up as the evening goes on. So they had wind last night and rain. We can expect the same. It's all about timing. And for that, I want to go now to meteorologist Todd Howell. Todd, the rain cannot come soon enough.
All right, thank you so much, John and Robin. Certainly, we are looking at a little bit of a light breeze right now. The big story, it's a 1-2 punch, kind of like last night, although we're not expecting as strong a winds tonight as what Gatlinburg especially saw last night, where winds were basically over 60 to even 70 miles per hour. One unofficial report of 87-mile-per-hour gusts last night, and that the winds coming straight out of the south. That's what fanned the flames and spread the fire so quickly. That was last night. So far today, winds have switched around from the south to the southwest, and not as strong of a wind. Right now, just a gentle light breeze. The issue overnight is those winds are going to be increasing once again. A wind advisory for the foothills, including Gatlinburg. Winds could gust 30 to 40 miles per hour or so, but then winds could gust 50 miles per hour plus over the higher peaks, where a high wind warning will be in place overnight. So we have wind advisories, high wind warnings in effect for the mountainous areas for tonight, and certainly we'll be talking more about that. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening right now as far as current conditions, and back in Knoxville. And oh, by the way, we are smelling more of that smoke. And so the 1-2 punch I was mentioning to finish that thought, with the winds are going to increase tonight, but the rain is not going to be really arriving until late tonight, even tomorrow morning. So we're going to have to endure a period of time overnight where the winds are increasing before we see the beneficial rains as far as here in Gatlinburg. Now, parts of East Tennessee, including the Plateau, will be experiencing some heavy rainfall tonight, and hopefully that slides eastward toward the mountains sooner rather than later. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. 65 degrees currently in Knoxville. The winds at the airport in Knoxville calm right now. Again, a little bit of a light breeze out of the southwest behind me here in Gatlinburg. But that's what's happening current conditions. Let's talk about those current wind speeds right now as we take a look at those again. Winds not overly high just yet, but the forecast winds are forecast to increase on our futurecast as we go late tonight, especially after midnight. That period of time between about 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., that's when wind speeds are forecast to increase overnight and early in the morning. So that's going to be the concern. Before the heaviest rains arrive, the winds pick up first, and that's kind of a little bit of what we saw last night, although the winds, again, are not going to be as strong tonight and out of a different direction. And as we talk about the winds, I feel them behind me on my back increasing a little bit. But before the rains arrive, there are going to be some breezy winds. and maybe gusty at times here in the mountains. So that's going to be a concern until we get those welcome rains coming in tomorrow morning. So that's a look at our futurecast winds. Now, let's talk about, again, some of the potential rainfall and that we could see in our timeline with our futurecast. As we take a look at that, again, we're going to see the better chances for showers arriving generally well after midnight and into tomorrow morning as far as across the mountainous region. So let's take a look at that and move forward. Again, here's what we're seeing. We are going to see those heavier rain showers across parts of the plateau moving into the valley, especially by late tonight and again after midnight. Heavy rainfall expected across parts of the plateau into the western valley, and then as we get into tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. or so, that's where we're seeing some very heavy rainfall across the plateau and in the valley. And then otherwise, we are going to be seeing the showers slowly but surely pushing their way east into the mountainous region, including Gatlinburg. Now, 1 to 2 inches of rain is expected with this next round across our region. However, on the plateau, we could be seeing amounts even higher than that with amounts of anywhere from 2 to 4 inches possible along the plateau. It looks like that's where we're going to see the area of rainfall being maximized as far as that goes. So again, that's what we're talking about, the heavier rains in the plateau and slowly moving eastward. It's going to take a while to get here as far as the mountainous.
At least 3 people have died in wildfires in eastern Tennessee.
Hit the gas! Hit the gas!
More than 14,000 residents were forced to evacuate, including from Dolly Parton's Dollywood theme park, where fires burned several surrounding cabins.